Our next target city is Havre, where we visit a historic archaeological site once thought to be too close for comfort. As Badriya Abdullah shows us, its founder and the site both make up an important part of Montana history.
Hunting season is over, and for this barren landscape, it has been for hundreds of years. This slope was once a steep hill used annually as a bison jump. The Wahkpa Chu'gn buffalo jump was used by various Native American tribes before it was abandoned more than 600 years ago. For years, thousands of bones laid buried here as Havre's hidden treasure, until 1961, when 15-year-old John Brimley's curiosity led to the discovery.
As a kid, I just happened to ask my next-door neighbor who was interested in rocks and geology. I said, "Do you know of any archaeological sites in the area?" And he said, "No." But he says, "I did hear that when the railroad was being constructed down near the highway department buildings, that they had taken out a lot of buffalo bones." So went on a little trip, rabbit hunting and looking for this area where these bones had been found at the same time, and walked into the site area and noticed a number of buffalo bones and firecrack rock and flakes and some artifacts, and that's how I found the site.
After the discovery, John and the Milk River Archaeology Society took immediate action to get the site protected.
The first name they put on it was Too Close for Comfort Bison Kill. And they called it that because it was just on the edge of Havre, and they were afraid if too many people found out about it, it would start being vandalized for people looking just for artifacts.
The site was used by 3 different Native American tribes. Archaeologists learned that the first 2 settlers were Basant and Avonlea by their distinctly different hunting styles. But the third group of people remains a mystery. By looking at the bones of the younger buffalo, Brimley says they can determine when the animals were hunted. With all this information, Brimley says they've reconstructed one of the most extensive state records on bison jumps.
It's not like going to a museum and seeing items in a glass case or something. You're down right in there. It's probably the best way to get an impression of just what these sites consist of, what the archaeological materials are like that they find, and I don't think you can duplicate it over in that area.
The find left its print on John's life. He went on to study in Alberta and earned a master's degree in archaeology. 47 years later, John's still heavily involved in the site's day-to-day operations. During the summer months, John and his wife offer visitors an opportunity to join them on an hour-long tour of the grounds. Tours include visiting the in-place displays, cooking buffalo meat over a rock stove, and a chance to swing an atlatl, a spear-like weapon used by the site's Basant settlers. Toni Hagner moved from the Havre Museum to the buffalo jump to get her hands on the find and was quickly placed as the curator for this tourist attraction. Hagner says she was eager to share their discovery and take in the reactions.
They're always surprised at how much they actually see and how much they actually learn about the buffalo jump site.
Though the site holds many purposes, Brimley says the most important is its educational potential. He says they cater to over 1,500 summer tourists and several hundred students from local communities.
We have not done much research at the site in terms of excavation for a number of years, mainly because new archaeological techniques are being developed all the time. If new techniques are developed in the future and this site still exists, it hasn't been vandalized or destroyed, the opportunity is always there to go back and do new research. From starting in this area.
Brimley says his connections to finding and developing the site keep him close by,
When you see an airport's what?
along with the memorable visitors he gets to meet.
I remember one kid said, "How do you get the buffalo down into these pits? How did they get the buffalo down in these pits?" And so, they just see stuff from a perspective you can't imagine. And it's a treat a lot of times. The enthusiasm is pretty hard to beat. About the area where you see those weeds is where I'd start.
Reporting for Montana Journal, I'm Badriya Abdullah.
Tours are available from June 1st through Labor Day or by appointment. For more information, you can visit buffalojump.org. Billings is our
with each year, as time progresses, we lose more and more of the information that we have. Whether we're talking about prehistoric cultures that were 11,000 years ago or 9,000 years ago, or whether we're talking about historic events that were even as recent as 50 years ago, pieces have disappeared. So we have to take these opportunities really to document as much as we possibly can, because we're going to lose more just with the passage of time.
The rolling hills and broad creek valleys along the tributaries of the Knife River in western North Dakota contain some of the most spectacular archaeological remains in North America. At quarry sites dotting the hill slopes, a dark brown translucent stone known as Knife River flint was dug from the ground and was worked into spear points, scrapers, and other implements. The story of the ancient peoples who lived in this region is being revealed, bit by bit, primarily at locations where modern development intersects long-forgotten archaeological sites. One such location is at Lake Ilo, the central feature of the Lake Ilo National Wildlife Refuge, which is managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. A complex, multi-year program of scientific study is now underway at the Lake Ilo National Wildlife Refuge. When the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service conducted a safety study of the 50-year-old Lake Ilo Dam, a deficiency was discovered, and a 7-foot notch was cut in the dam to lower the lake level. This abrupt lowering of the lake level starkly revealed for the first time numerous archaeological sites on the exposed lakebed surface. Shortly after this discovery, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service began a long-term program of archaeological and historical investigation.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, along with other federal agencies, is responsible for taking care of cultural resources on their properties. So anytime we have a construction project, we need to find these and figure out what to do with them. Basically, we have a three-pronged project. First is inventory, second is evaluation, and the third one is mitigation of the adverse effects if necessary. The inventory phase of these projects is finding the sites. Further work consisted of evaluative testing to find out whether the sites out here were eligible for nomination to the National Register. The mitigation of archaeological sites usually consists of a data recovery program. This is what we're doing out here right now. We have a crew that's collecting very, very minute, detailed information.
Among the many artifacts and projectile points found during archaeological inventory at Lake Ilo, the most spectacular and intriguing was a fragment of a fluted spear point. This was a Folsom point, made about 11,000 years ago, just after the dawn of the peopling of the Americas. The people who made Folsom spear points remain shrouded in mystery. We do know that Folsom peoples were big game hunters who preyed on an extinct form of bison substantially larger than the modern buffalo.
This site is really unique in terms of the diversity of activities represented here. Most Folsom sites are rather specific in terms of what the people were doing. They're either killing bison, butchering the animals nearby, or perhaps it's a camp location. In this spot here, we have flint quarry activities, people digging pits, digging holes in the ground to recover flint cobbles. They're manufacturing finished tools from those flint cobbles. They are refitting their hunting equipment, replacing broken spear points, and they're conducting other camp activities, working hides, fabricating probably other kinds of wooden implements that we don't have any real idea about. But we know there's a tremendous range of things going on here, and this is unique in a Folsom location.
As with all complex archaeological studies, a clear understanding of site geology is a highly important part of the investigations.
The reason a geologist is brought onto a project like this is because we have specialized training in the study of soils and sediment. And in particular, we focus on the history, the geologic history, or the physical, environmental history of this site and how it evolved through time. Okay, in this long trench that we've dug exposes a exposes this buried soil that we call the Leonard Paleosol. It dates between 9 and 10,000 years ago. The soil itself represents the former land surface at the time that Folsom and other Paleo-Indian peoples would have occupied this site.
Okay, we've chosen to dig in this part of the site because our backhoe trenches and early test excavations have showed that this part of the site contains quite a few artifacts, as many as 500 artifacts in every 5-centimeter level of sediment, and that these deposits of artifacts extend quite deep, as much as 1.5 meters or about 5 feet below the surface. And we placed an excavation unit right here, and in that unit, about 15 centimeters below the surface, we discovered a Folsom point that had been broken and manufactured, had been broken in half when one of the flutes had been taken off. And so because of that important discovery, we decided to expand our excavations into this 3 by 3 meter block.
State-of-the-art surveying equipment is used to plot the location of artifacts of particular interest, such as flint core, a bone fragment, a spear point, or a flake of unusual raw material. This instrument is called a total station. It is a laser transit driven by software programs in the attached handheld computer. Artifact plot data are downloaded from the field computer into a desktop computer in the lab for further analysis. Paper records are very important and are used for describing every phase of the excavation and for tracking all excavated samples. Each plotted artifact and each load of settlement from each excavation square is assigned an individual catalog number. These catalog numbers are keyed to information about location within the site. Wheelbarrow loads of excavated settlement are tagged with catalog information as they go to the water screens for washing. The water screens capture many hundreds of flakes and other kinds of materials. These are in addition to the individual artifacts which were discovered and plotted during excavation. All of these materials must be integrated together in the archaeological lab, where the artifacts are studied in detail, classified, and interpreted. This is where the information about the site is brought to bear on the question posed in the research design, which guides all of the work at the site. Study of the artifacts begins with size grading of the samples from excavation. This aggregate shaker is used to separate the artifacts into size classes, ranging from those greater than 1 inch in diameter to those less than 1/8 inch in size. Size grading speeds the sorting process, which follows, and also organizes the collection for certain specialized studies. Samples are carefully sorted by lab workers into material categories, such as chipped stone flaking debris, stone tools, cores, bone, fire-cracked rock, natural flint, and other natural rocks and gravels. Sorting of larger size specimens proceeds rapidly. Each piece is carefully inspected to see if it retains evidence of flaking or use as a simple or complex tool. Sorting of smaller size material is more time-consuming, but worth the effort. Detailed bits of information about activities at the site are brought to light. Many of the recovered stone tools are simply the unusable byproduct of the flint flaking, which was a common activity at the site. This includes cores, or the nucleus of the flint cobble from which the usable flakes were struck. This also includes many fragments of bifaces, or tools flaked on two faces that were broken or discarded during the manufacturing process. The most abundant artifact at the site is chipped stone flaking debris. These are chips and fragments produced during core reduction, tool production, and during tool sharpening. Some of these minute flakes may provide the best evidence for use and sharpening of a scraper or a butchering tool. Frequently, the tool or core is not recovered during excavation. This channel flake or fluting flake, for example, is the only evidence recovered so far from the successful manufacture of one particular Folsom spear point. The spear point was either carried away from the site or still lies in some unexcavated area. Special techniques are used to study flaking debris. Modern flint knapping experiments are used to produce controlled flake samples, manufactured by known techniques and useful for comparative study. The experiments are designed to replicate flaking tasks observed in the cores, bifaces, and other tools at the Lake Ilo site. larger flakes are individually studied for attributes useful for interpretation. The lower flake is an experimental flake struck from a biface, or a partially finished spear point. The lighter colored flake is an archaeological flake. Although broken, its close similarity in size and shape to the experimental flake tells us that it, too, is a biface thinning flake. Individual tools are subjected to more intensive study. Finished implements are examined under a microscope to detect wear patterns on used edges and surfaces. From the nature of this wear, the archaeologist can determine more precisely how the tool was used and can more accurately reconstruct activities at the site.
Typically, archaeologists have been very interested in studying especially the projectile points, these very finely crafted spear points, which are, well, they're really works of art. The people that made these were masters of their medium. At Lake Ilo, a single Folsom point was probably made from a single cobble of Knife River flint. A suitable cobble was selected. It was bifacially edged, and then it was flaked with bifacial thinning to produce a preform.